All right, so today is going to be a quick day. We have a handful of slides to cover to finish chapter 12, and then there'll be an exam up at 4 p.m., closing at midnight on Monday on chapters 8 through 12. Let's see.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you're taking that exam, and say if you want to walk away from it for a while and come back to it, how do you do that? Does anyone know?
I think you just don't close out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, I've never actually taken the exam or quiz or anything. I know there's a way though. I want to say it's like save and close, but don't take my word for it. I don't really know. Um,
Yeah, because there's not a save thing on there. I do know that. So I think she's right. The only way that you can do that is just don't close it out.
yeah. Yeah, to be safe, you probably should do that. I'll try to keep it to, you know, I'll keep it reasonable, no more than 60 questions. Like, a normal exam.
No, 60. That's it, huh?
Well, I'm thinking that if it were an in-class exam where we would have 50 minutes, I would probably give you an exam with 50 questions. Um,
Yeah,
but
I
because
wish
there's
it was.
but there's no time limit.
Yeah, I
So
know.
and getting 50 questions from four chapters averages to like 12.6 questions per chapter. And that's, I don't know. I'm not sure that's enough to really assess whether or not you know it. So let's continue. We're going to go through a series of questions. So this is going to be kind of like a review. So when Kathleen started relating to me in the way she related to her mother, it became clear that she perceived her mother as a rival for her father's affection. What type of therapy is being used in this scenario? In this case, it's an example of transference. The the client is transferring their thoughts, feelings onto the therapist. So what kind of therapy is being used? Anyone want to guess?
I don't know from that question.
Psychodynamic.
That's what I was looking. I'll be totally honest with you. I was looking at it, but
Good.
I
So
wasn't sure.
so the idea is with psychodynamic therapy using psychoanalysis, the goal is to try to find what are the underlying conflicts or motives. And in this case, the person who's providing therapy is is asking questions about the person's past and their feelings, and then they start to notice that the client is relating or communicating or expressing feelings toward the therapist as the client would toward the mother. So what about this situation? That child was a bad actor. He had a serious behavior disorder. It wasn't difficult to understand how he got that way after I had a few sessions with his parents and siblings. What kind of therapy?
Behavioral.
Not
Family?
behavioral. It is family, and I could understand why you would think because it was a bad acting behavior disorder. But when they're having sessions, including the parents and siblings, that's family. Okay. He needs to convince himself that his past failures are not elements of a pattern that will govern his future. And he needs to convince himself that he is in charge of his life and that he can choose the paths that will lead to accomplishment and satisfaction. What kind of therapy?
Wait,
Cognitive,
Cognitive. And why is it cognitive, Hammer?
because he's trying to convince himself.
Okay, that's the key word, convince. And that involves his thinking, his thoughts, right? All right. So now we're going to evaluate different forms of therapy, psychotherapy, and what benefits, what specific ailments or maladies they help most with. So for depression and or suicide attempts, cognitive therapy. Anxiety, exposure therapy. Anger and impulsive violence, cognitive therapy. Health problems, cognitive and behavior therapy. So we're talking about health. We're talking about, like someone has like an addiction disorder or an eating disorder, right? Childhood and adolescent behavior problems, behavior therapy. So with depression, you want them to challenge their irrational thoughts, the reality of their thinking. Anxiety, think of a phobic disorder, right? Someone's afraid of heights. You want to expose them through graduated exposure or flooding, but that's probably, dangerous. Anger and impulsive violence, cognitive therapy. If it's impulsive, you want people to stop just for a minute and think before they act. Health, you want them to change their behaviors and understand what's reinforcing those behaviors. And then for childhood and adolescent behavior problems, you want to use behavior therapy. You want to use uh, 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 um, um, behavior modification, reinforce the good ones and punish the bad ones. So if you have arachnophobia, an intense fear of spiders, what kind of therapy should you seek out for the best chance of resolving the problem?
Wouldn't it be behavioral?
Yes, Bob. Well done. While many therapies are helpful and effective, it is actually possible that therapy can be more harmful. Why? If therapists are using empirically unsupported, meaning it hasn't been tested, if they're just like saying, well, this is my approach to solving this problem, or this is my belief about, if there's no science behind it, there's no research behind it, it could be potentially dangerous. If the therapist is using inappropriate or coercive influence, that ends up creating new symptoms, right? So now you were afraid of something, now you're associating that something with something else. If the therapist has a prejudice or is culturally ignorant, meaning they don't understand that some of these things are normal for that culture, right? Some of these things are like, oh, I'm always spending time thinking about the other. Wow, you need to start thinking about yourself a little more. Well, if that's from a collectivistic culture, that's normal. Or, and the last one, sexual intimacy or other unethical behavior on the part of the therapist, right? So taking
Well,
advantage of the client.
that happens a lot.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it happens a lot. It happens more than it should. So there's this gap between science, between what's studied, what's researched, and what people are actually practicing, what these clinicians are actually practicing. Some psychotherapists believe that evaluating therapy using research methods is futile. They think that it's a waste of time and that you can't really get to the root, or you can't really statistically say that this is or is not effective. But we know that scientists find that therapists who do not keep up with empirical findings are less effective and can even harm clients. So there are some economic pressures that require empirical assessment of therapies. So um, if something's causing more harm, then it's going to essentially cause the client to seek more help in different ways, which is going to cost the insurance company more money. So insurance companies want to make sure that whatever form of therapy is used is effective and not wasting money or time. Humanist therapy. Humanist therapy based on the assumption that people are basically good and that problems occur as a result of self-imposed limits, not environmental or unconscious conflicts. It emphasizes people's free will to change and not their past conflicts, right? Controlling them, ruling their lives. A kind of humanist, or one humanist named Carl Rogers, came up with a form of therapy called non-directive or client-centered therapy, where basically the therapist provides unconditional positive regard, no judgment, and there's communication of it. Okay, so you stole. Okay, I'm listening. That's fine. Keep going. Right. And the non-directive is where the client directs where it goes. Oh, okay. So we're talking about this and oh, okay, I understand. And if the client goes off topic and starts talking about something else, then the therapist goes along with the ride and says, okay, well, there's obviously something important here. There's obviously something that you think is important. I'm just going to keep taking notes and you go instead of just directing. Okay, I've asked you this question. Let's see what's the next question on my list. That's a directive form of therapy. Again, going back to culture, right? So in order for therapy to make the most effective outcome, there has to be an alliance, and we call it a therapeutic alliance, an alliance between the clinician and the client. So when there's a cultural match, clients and psychotherapists are more likely to share perceptions of what the client's problems are. They will agree on the best way of coping and have the same expectations about what therapy can accomplish. But when there's a mismatch, successful therapy can still be accomplished when the clinician is culturally sensitive and is open-minded and starts looking up, researching, identifying, okay, here this person is from Australia. They have some sort of behavior disorder that we would, according to our culture, maybe they have, you know, too much aggression, right? They have some anger management issues. But if they were culturally sensitive, then they might consider, well, they're just more aggressive, generally speaking, in Australia than they are in New Zealand or Switzerland. Okay.
You're in a hurry today, aren't you?
No, I just,
Oh,
we have time. So if you have
What was
questions,
on the bottom of that last slide?
that's
Jared?
what I
Susto.
was.
So susto is a loss of soul in some Latin American speaking countries. And so this could mistakenly lead in a different country, someone to diagnose the person being psychotic. But really, it's a normal expression of emotion.
So that's just basically an
I
example of taking culture into consideration.
Correct.
What was that last word? Psycho what?
Psychoticism. Psychoticism.
I don't know how to spell that.
Psychotic-ism.
I got it.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any more questions? You have questions for me?
No.
Okay. I don't have anything to even share with you I don't think. Let me look. Let me see. Let me see if I can find an old exam. Though I'm not sure the chapters are going to line up. Yeah, this exam is 7 through 10. And yours is 8 through 11. Let me look at this here. This is why I've been going slow all week, because I knew this is going to be a quick chapter. When you only have, whatever number of slides, how many slides were in this chapter? 47, 48. All right. That's not going to help me.
No, in my personal opinion, this last few slides that we went over is the most important. If you're going to be a counselor, you got to be aware of a lot of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right. Why am I finding only this study here? Let's see.
You can't just sit on the chair and wing it.
Okay.
But most of them do.
Well, they shouldn't be if they are.
I know. It shouldn't be.
So let's do this then. Since we have, let me open this up here. Okay. We could do a small review looking at different chapters or different exams of mine. Um, let's see. I can throw out some idea of what it's going to be. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Anything.
All right. Let me just set it up. I have most of it set up. I'm just gonna do this. Trying to think of what was chapter 8. Does anybody know what chapter 8 was? I can
I
find
got
it.
my notes on it right here.
If you just tell me anything about it, it'll give me an idea. Wait, no, it's on 9 through 12.
Memory. It was about memory.
Okay, yeah, because it's 9 through 12, not 8 through 12. Sorry, 9 through 12. All right, hold on. Memory. Okay.
Yeah, that's an 8. It starts out with memory.
What's 9?
9.
Because it's 9, 10, 11, 12 is our exam.
9 is learning and conditioning,
Okay, there we go.
relative change in behavior patterns.
Okay.
Behavioralism. Classic conditioning.
This is all on. Let me see. Come on. Okay. All right. So, let's see. One of the questions. Now, I haven't made it. I haven't put this together, but these are questions I've asked in the past. All right. Essentially, what are behaviorists? Like, what do they believe?
What do they be? They
Like, what's their thing? Like, what makes a behaviorist, a behavioral psychologist, different than, say, a cognitive psychologist?
well, they focus on different types of behavior.
Okay, and what do they think determines their behavior, an individual's behavior?
Their family dynamics,
What else?
their
Yeah, react to a certain situation, maybe.
Good. So it's about
yeah,
the environment.
reaction.
Right. Very good. Okay.
Environment.
So
Environmental.
what is essentially the definition of learning?
Oh, I got that.
Change of behavior.
A change in behavior due to what?
Behavior have to change.
Yep. So learning, very good, Koku. Learning is the change in behavior due to what? Like what's causing the change in behavior?
Oh,
Your environment.
It doesn't have to be your environment per se. The behaviors would say so. It's due to some experience.
okay.
Or if you're given new information.
Okay. Some experience. Right. So another question I could ask would be on classical conditioning and the classic experiment of the dog and the salivating and the meat powder being used as the unconditioned stimulus, the salivating being the condition, the unconditioned response, and then a bell being in neutral stimulus turning into a conditioned stimulus. Yeah, that's that question.
Conditioned stimulus.
Yeah, so just study the principles of classical conditioning, the idea that we reflexively respond to something because it's been associated with something else. I would know the difference between stimulus discrimination and stimulus generalization.
give me a second, I can tell you.
Now, classical conditioning is unconscious learning, reflexive learning, involuntary. Operant conditioning is voluntary. It's you're aware of it based on what? Meaning people will do something or not do something again based on what?
I just saw that. I just wrote it down.
So if Hammer says scuba about jellyfishes, and I say, all right, I'm going to give you 100 on the exam, everyone's going to go, hey, scuba about jellyfishes, right? So that means
Right.
that you have learned to do something. This is based on observational learning, but based on the consequences is the answer. We'll do things again based on the consequences of our actions. So what do we call it when what is it called when someone mows the lawn and they get $5? What is that $5 a form of?
Payment.
What's the psychological term that we use?
Compensation.
What's the psychological
Well,
term that we use? Let's do this. You're 16, you're out too late, and your parents say, that's it, you're grounded. That would be a form of what?
Punishment.
Good. So what if you got $5 for mowing the lawn? What is that a form of?
Reward.
Or also known as?
Oh, you're killing me.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
fair balance.
No. It's called reinforcement.
yeah. I was looking for the word.
Okay. Know the difference between a primary and a secondary reinforcer. Our primary reinforcers are our what? Primary reinforcers are our needs, like food, water, sex, sleep. Secondary reinforcers are our wants. Know the difference between positive and negative. If it's positive reinforcement, it means something was given. If it's positive punishment, something was given. But reinforcement increases the likelihood the behavior will be repeated. Punishment decreases.
I get.
Confused by that?
So I don't know. I don't even know if this is your wants and your needs, you know, like when it comes to sex. I mean, I don't need to have sex. I already got my kids, but I want to. So how is it like?
These can be both. Like you
Okay.
don't need a candy bar. You want a candy bar, but candy bar is still food, so it'd be considered both.
Okay.
Yeah, you could totally use sex as a secondary.
Okay.
So primary forces are
Species survival.
we need.
What do we need for our species to survive?
Reproduction.
Yeah, all the things we said, but yeah, sex.
I can't.
Food and water and sleep and waste, excretion, temperature regulation, the very basics. Know what shaping is. Know what instinctive drift is.
Drift is.
Instinctive drift.
Oh.
So now on to chapter 10. know what norms are.
Okay, that's easy.
Know who conducted the obedience to authority study, the classic obedience to authority. Know the name of the person.
Pavlov.
That was classical conditioning.
So what did you just ask?
Know the name of the individual who designed and ran the obedience study.
The guy that
obedi-
did the electrocution thing.
Correct. Know about the difference between dispositional and situational attributions when defining another's behavior. Right? You see someone behave a certain way. If you say it's about who they are, it's you're assigning a dispositional attribution. If you're saying it's something about their environment, you're saying it's a situational attribution.
And that's all like the get mad, road rage kind
Good.
of thing.
Good. And what is that called? When we tend to focus or use more dispositional and not situational. I'm just going to tell you, it's called, and know this, the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error. What is cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance is the same as the neutral.
Cognitive dissonance.
Unhappiness with the problem because of your
Two
belief.
different.
Okay, it is creating psychological tension, Hammer. Two different what, Koku?
Forgot it.
That's right. Two different
Forgot the word.
thoughts. You're having
Thoughts.
competing
Yeah,
thoughts.
conflict. Yeah.
Yes, there's a conflict and it's creating psychological tension, which could come in the form of remorse, embarrassment, guilt,
Regret.
regret. Solomon Asch came up with this line experiment where he had a bunch of people sitting in a room and they all chose the wrong length line to match it up intentionally because they wanted to see what one person in the room was going to do. What were they measuring?
They're measuring lines on a graph or something.
Right. What did they want to measure in the individual who was not in on it though? What did they want to see? What did they want to know?
They wanted to know if he would go along with the group.
What's that called,
Or-
Bob?
That's called.
You're right. Keep going. What is it
I
called?
don't know what it's called, but I know exactly.
Yep.
I'm looking at the slide in my head.
You need to know what it's called, and it's going along with others in the group, and that is called what? Conformity. It's all right. That's why we're reviewing. This is what we're studying about. You need to know what groupthink is, where people will agree to go along with the group. Because being unanimous, being all in agreement is more important. Group cohesiveness is more important than the actual decision being made. You need to be aware of the bystander effect. Also known as bystander apathy. Apathy means you don't care. You need to know ways people, you need to know what tests scientists or psychologists use to measure prejudice. You need to know how to reduce prejudice. You need to know what one of the causes of prejudice are.
And all these things are associated with the slides and the
Yep.
or
it's-
in my notes.
Yep. If it's not in the slides or something I've talked about, it's not in an exam.
Okay. No, I started this morning at 6 o'clock and started from 9 and just started adding little notes to my notes I already had. So that's why there's just a lot of things going on in my head that once I see the question, I'll probably know where to look to find it.
Yep. I suspect you're right.
Hey, I actually have to go.
Okay, buddy.
Have a good one.
Thanks. You too, Caleb.
Thanks, man.
Okay. Now on to chapter 11. What is the definition of a mental disorder? You don't have to answer. I'm just telling you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Next question. What is the DSM used for?
Oh, that's easy.
Let's see. What is the difference between an objective and a projective test? What example in your notes was a valid and reliable personality test?
What was it? Can you say that last part again?
What is a reliable and valid personality test that we discussed? That's also in your notes.
A reliable and
Valid.
unreliable?
A reliable and valid personality test.
I didn't write it down, but it's like the Myers-Briggs, right? Myers-Briggs.
That is
No?
not in your notes.
I'm glad I didn't write it down.
Right. But we did talk about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is also, there's one in your notes that's specific.
Yes.
You need to know the difference between generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder.
Uh-oh, ran out of ink.
You need to know what PTSD is.
Well, that's kind of,
You need to know what OCD is. Yes, Bob. Some of these should be easier than others. PTSD, OCD. You need to know what major depression is. You need to know what the vulnerability stress model is. The vulnerability stress model. The idea basically is that it's an interaction between aspects of yourself and stressful experiences. The vulnerability stress model. You need to know what antisocial personality disorder is. You need to know what, Bob, you'll like this one. You need to know the two dominant approaches to understanding addiction and drug abuse are. It is not the humanist model.
The two. Can you say that one more time, please?
The two, it's number 9 on your quiz. Your last quiz. It's that one.
No, I don't know what that is.
It's the two dominant approaches to understanding addiction and drug abuse. You chose the wrong answer. And you were like, are you sure this is, thank you. Are you sure this is correct? That one. You need to know what one of the explanations for multiple personality disorder is. Meaning, where does it come from? There are two explanations. One saying that it comes from the person, the other one saying it comes from the therapist. You need to know what's been associated with schizophrenia. What has been linked with schizophrenia. You need to know what the most common form of treatment for mental disorders are. What do you think that is, Hammer?
The most common forms?
Yeah. Or form.
Therapy.
What kind
Oh,
of
for
therapy?
mental disorder? Medicine.
Yeah, medicine, right. And that falls under what area? Humanist, behavioral, psychodynamic, or biological?
Biological.
Very good. You need to know what some side effects of antipsychotics are.
Oh, okay.
You need to know when treating depression, what the drugs do. So if you have monoamine oxidase inhibitors, it's breaking up an enzyme that breaks up serotonin and epinephrine. If you have tricyclics, it's blocking the reuptake of serotonin and epinephrine. If you have SSRIs, it's blocking the reuptake of serotonin. It's that one slide, just know that one slide.
Yeah, there's the two on that slide. Yeah.
You need to know what GABA, the neurotransmitter GABA, is for. Treating, and how they use that information to treat certain disorders. You need to know what people with bipolar disorder take for medicine.
I missed that. I didn't hear you. It cut out.
Bipolar disorder medicine.
Yeah.
You need to know what electroshock therapy is, or electroconvulsive therapy is. You need to know what a psychodynamic therapy focuses on, a therapist focuses on. You need to know how to treat phobic disorders. You need to know what cognitive therapy is. You need to know what cultural ignorance does when it comes to therapy. You need to know what is the second most effective form of treatment other than medicine.
Did you say common?
The second most effective, and you could
Oh.
say common and common. Yep.
Besides meds.
Besides, yep, medication. That's it. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Give me a good grade.
That's a request, not a question.
Well, can you give me a good grade?
All right, you guys. I'm gonna jet. Have a good weekend. Take your time.
So, bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, I'll definitely take my time to
All right. Good. Yeah, because you do better when you don't rush.
about.
Okay.